This is episode 2. Welcome to the EcoConscious Diver Show. I'm your host, Caitlin, PADI scuba instructor, scientific diver, and science communications specialist. I'm here to remind you that being eco-conscious is cool. Learning about the environment can be fun, and climate change isn't a dirty word. Each week, I'll be getting up close and personal with thought leaders from around the globe as your weekly dose of motivation so that you can create epic change in your own life and become the best version of yourself possible. Are you ready to dive? Thank you so much for tuning in again to this second podcast. If you've been following me, you might know by now that I'd rather just kind of throw things against a wall and see what sticks than make things absolutely perfect before I release them. This is just more fun for me. And, hopefully you can appreciate that about me and know that I'm just a little more raw in that aspect than calculated. I'm excited to actually grow and learn and just get better and better the more that I do this. So hopefully you'll come along this journey with me. And I definitely have gratitude for those of you that are tuning in for the second episode here. So my friend from the UK, Emma, who was visiting this last weekend, she actually is a big podcast listener and had a little bit of feedback for me. She let me know that a lot of podcasters actually start out their episodes and their whole podcast in general by telling people their entire backstory and what brought them to creating this podcast, what's kind of fueling them. And I realized that on the last episode that I didn't really do that at all. I just sort of told you what EcoConscious Diver was about and, rambled off some facts, and I didn't really let you into my life or myself at all. So I would love to give you a little bit of a background about myself just so that you can know me better and we can start this journey off on that foot. So let's start from the beginning. I was actually born on February 6, 1990. I'm 30 years old now. I was born in a city called Amarillo, Texas. It is a city. It's not a small town. It's the largest city in the northern panhandle. So like that square bit that's at the top of Texas, it's right smack dab in the middle of that. And, all of the other small towns, ranch towns and farms around, they all come into Amarillo to do their shopping and stuff. So we've got, big malls and lots of places to eat and all that sorts of stuff. Growing up, I did pretty much every activity known to man. I was really, really active. I did ballet, tap, and jazz for 6 years. I did soccer for a really long time, even club soccer. I even did club volleyball, wasn't too great at that one. I tried to play basketball, was way too short for that. I ended up crying because people would hold the ball over my head. And finally, I settled into cheerleading. So I did high school cheerleading, and then I also did Cheer Texas, which was a competitive cheerleading league where we went up against everyone in the state. And we actually won a lot. It was really, really fun. So that's pretty much who I was. Oh, I also did Girl Scouts. My mom was the troop leader there. My mom was also a Sunday school teacher, and and she was the president of PTA. So she was around in high school, when it was totally not cool for your parents to be around. But looking back, I really love how involved she was. My dad actually owned the Midas muffler shops in town. Those are kind of car shops where people get their car fixed and everything like that. He owned 2 of them, so he was really, really busy, but really, really took care of our family. And he retired when I was in high school, so I really got to get to know him before I went off to college, which was really awesome. I kind of saw a part of him that I'd never known before. And near the end of high school, I was always in pre-AP classes and AP classes, which meant I was ahead. And when it got to be time to register for my senior year, we realized that I had enough credits to graduate high school early, an entire year early, in just 3 years. So I was kind of done with high school. I've always kind of been someone that when I feel like that's over in my life, I'm ready to just move on. I don't kind of linger around. And you'll see that as the story goes on. So anyway, I decided to graduate at 17. And there was another girl who I'd grown up playing soccer with who was supposed to go with me. And we were both going to go early and live together in the dorms. And she wound up staying in Amarillo. And I kind of thought, am I going to go or am I going to stay here because I'm scared to go on my own? And ultimately, I decided I was just going to go. So that was the first time that I actually went off to college on my own, and moved over 8 hours south from my hometown. So it's actually 2 flights, because you have to go through Dallas to get to hell. That's what we all say, because you got to go through Dallas to get anywhere. So where I went to college is called Texas State University. It was in San Marcos, Texas. It's like 30 minutes south of Austin. And I moved into the dorms. I had the whole dorm experience. Initially, I wanted to be in journalism, and I kind of figured out that I wanted to do something that would make me maybe a little more money. And so I kind of put it together and realized I wanted to do advertising. And I really actually, enjoyed learning about that in school, all the creativity and graphic design. I've always kind of liked painting, and there's still some of my paintings on my wall at my parents' house. So I did that, and I was in a sorority. I was in Alpha Zeta Delta for a couple of those years there, and dated all the frat guys, and did that stuff. I actually graduated college in exactly 4 years as well. So it was a big joke because I graduated after my 21st birthday. So I turned 21 in February, and then I graduated college like 3 months after that. So all through college, I was using a fake ID. I couldn't even drink at any of the tailgates. So I was like the little sister, I think, through a lot of college in that way. I was always the youngest one, but I always hung out with the older girls. I always thought I was really mature. And so anyway, I, at 21 graduated from Texas State University with a bachelor's in advertising and communication studies. And I did what every, good girl does, and I went and got a job right out of college at a staffing agency, which I think is a lot of people's first job. And I wound up really hating it. It was awful. And so I finally quit. And then I got really lucky and I got a job at a magazine, which was definitely more in my realm. It was a college type magazine. Some of you guys might remember it if you're from Texas, called Study Breaks Magazine. So I worked there for a while, and that was really fun. And then I wound up getting a job at a magazine in Houston that was a little more upscale, definitely more fashion-y. And so I moved to Houston for a year. And that was all really exciting for me. I thought, wow, I'm finally going to have a really good job here out of college. And I don't know if any of the rest of you graduated around 2011 as well, but that's sort of when the economy took a turn. So things didn't really pan out for me the way that I had planned. And you'll see why. Basically, I thought, I've done everything that I was supposed to do. And then all of a sudden I found myself in Houston with this job, and I couldn't pay for my own groceries and also my rent. And it was awful. I cried a lot just about my own self-worth and what had really happened, and I was embarrassed. So I didn't want to go to my parents and ask for help because I thought, here I am, a grown woman, and I can't pay for my own groceries. So I got a bartending job. I knew some other girls who were bartending. And so I was bartending on the weekend and also doing my advertising job so that I could pay for my bills and stuff. And then ultimately, I thought this isn't working out, and I missed my friends in Austin. So I wound up going back to Austin. And at this point, I was so down in the dumps about just career in general that I sort of gave up. I got bartending job at a nightclub in Austin, and I was doing bottle service there. You guys are probably thinking, oh, wow, this bottle service girl is teaching us stuff on podcast about science. But anyway, so, I did that for about a year and a half, and I was just kind of caught up in that scene, just going out, and I didn't really have anything I was excited about. So I think I just, did what a lot of people do, and I just went out a lot. And finally, I just sort of thought, if I can't have the career that I want and or anything else, then I might as well just do what I've always wanted to do, which was move abroad and travel more. So, I had gotten certified in scuba diving when I was 12. My dad took me and my brother to get certified so we could all go on family vacations. And we'd gone on a couple to Honduras and Aruba, Hawaii, whenever I was younger. And so I kind of thought, maybe I should become a scuba professional and then I can move abroad. So I, started working on my dive master certification. There's a great spot in Austin, Scuba Land Adventures. There's a plug for you. And they helped me. Scuba Dan over there helped me get my dive master certification. And I started looking around at possible places that I could move. So, of course, I'm Googling, like, what are safe places for women who are alone to move? Solo traveler, all that sort of stuff. And I came up with a couple of good places. Initially, I thought I'll go teach English in Singapore or whatever. But then I came upon Australia and I thought, perfect. Who wouldn't be jealous of all these photos of me on the beach? And so I forged a plan, and it took me about 6 months of continuing to do bottle service and bartending. But they recommended that you save $4,000 before you do it. So I saved up plenty of money to go, and sold everything that I owned. It was crazy. By the time I moved out, there was nothing on the walls. And I even had a bank account set up. I had my phone SIM card before I left. I just reserved a spot at a hostel for 2 weeks in downtown Sydney. And that was pretty much my plan. I was like, I'll get a flat when I get there. And, I'd read a lot of blogs and stuff. All that stuff's online now. And I thought, I can do this. And it's crazy looking back now because a lot of people are like, oh, you must have had so much money to move to Australia and all this stuff. It's like, actually, I didn't. I just really worked at it and I forged a plan. But I think that's what people always kind of think is, oh, you just got lucky, or, oh, you must have a lot of money, or someone must have given you this, especially when women do something kind of outrageous like that. But that makes me even more proud that I did it. I think that's honestly the best thing I could have ever done for myself. Because now, anytime I hit some sort of big wall or anything that's tough, I'm always like, well, you know what? I moved literally to the other side of the planet by myself, so I can do it. And I think that's something that everyone needs to learn for themselves. So enough about that. Anyway, I did find a flat. I lived with like 6 French people and, some Italians and people from Belgium and all sorts of people. I had the time of my life. I didn't end up being a dive master over there at all, even though I had the certification. I worked at Marquee Nightclub, and then I actually ended up getting a marketing job at a venue that overlooked the Sydney Opera House. And that was the first time I felt like, wow, maybe I should get back into a career. I know that I'm smart enough to, but I think I just felt so defeated before. And they offered me sponsorship, but ultimately I ended up turning it down. My parents, being the wonderful people that they are, showed up in Australia for my birthday, and we ended up going to the Great Barrier Reef and diving together, and then rented a car and went all the way up through New Zealand together. And towards the end of the trip, my dad just said to me, if you stay here in Australia, we'll never know you and we'll never know our grandkids. And that would be a real shame. And I I think I'd never really thought about it like that. Um, and so, anyway, I decided he was right. And so I still had a lot of my visa going. And so I wound up moving with a friend up to Byron Bay. And I just enjoyed living up there. It was a beach town. I really just sort of got into a more of spiritual. If any of you have ever been to Byron Bay, it's a very spiritual type place. It's pretty awesome. And I wound up meeting a guy there who I ultimately followed to New Zealand because you can also get a working visa in New Zealand. So I did end up moving to New Zealand for about 6 months, and I met my friend Emma, who recommended me to do this intro in a hostel, and we wound up living together and moved in with a bunch of other people from the UK and a German guy, and we all had a really great time, did a lot of adventures together, and then I think I kind of reached the end of my rope. I was really, really homesick, and I felt like it was time to come home. So I came back, and to me, home has felt more like Austin as an adult. I moved to Austin when I was 17, and I spent the majority of my adult life in Austin by choice. And I always felt like Amarillo didn't really fit me like a glove. So when I say going home, I was like, yeah, I'm going to go see my parents for a couple of weeks in Amarillo, but really I'm going to go back to Austin. So I ended up back down in Austin, and I, saw my friends and everything, and I was there probably for almost a year, and then I just really missed the ocean. Although I wasn't working as a dive master abroad, I was really, really in the ocean more than I'd ever been in my whole life. And they say once you've lived on the coast once, you aren't willing to give it up again after that. And I think that's totally true, because I really missed it. And so sort of forged this plan, made a list of the outlying islands of the U.S., and I made some pros and cons lists and really set on St. Thomas. But then the hurricane hit, and I was like, well, first of all, I can't take my car to St. Thomas. So that's not going to work. So I ended up going to Key West, and I packed my car full of everything I owned and moved there with my boyfriend. So we lived in Key West for about 2 years. I started out just bartending there. I've always sort of used bartending as a tool for me to get to travel wherever I wanted to travel, because it's a job that's really easy to get, and it's easy to find. So you can just go wherever you want and bartend. So I found myself doing that again. And then I kind of heard around town that people were talking about this degree. It was a degree in marine environmental technology from the college down there called Florida Keys Community College. And it was something like I'd never heard of before. Really hands-on. I mean, we did classes in coral reef conservation, research diving. That's where I got my professional research diver certificate and my scientific diver certificate. I studied under Dr. Alex Brilski. He is kind of a legend as far as marine science and diving with Patty goes. He's like written the rescue diver book, and luckily I think I was the last class of people that got to study under him before he retired. So it just completely sparked me. I heard about it and I was like, I need to do this. I called my parents and I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And it completely swept me up, and I found myself down on that reef in Key West, loving the ocean more than I ever have in my whole entire life, and feeling like I had something to call my own. I've never felt that way before. On my days off, I was diving. For work, I was diving. I worked at several different dive shops, most notably being Lukey Reef Resort, who I still work with now, to bring people down to dive. And I just fell in love with it. I do love coral because I know that they're the reef builders, and they're, one of the most important parts of the ecosystem, but I'm a fish person. I love fish. I love their little faces. I like seeing how they interact. I could just sit down there and just stare at fish. It's insane. I need to get a rebreather. If anyone wants to buy me one, totally can. Because, if you use a rebreather, then they don't see you coming. So they continue to just act how they're going to act. So anyway, because I already had a bachelor's degree, I was able to get that really quickly in just over a year, basically. And so I graduated there, and then we thought, it's time to get off the island. I was really ready to get back into civilization and have a real career and give it another shot at this point. And, I was kind of getting towards the end of my 20s and thinking, I did all of the things that I really wanted to do in my 20s except for build wealth. And so around that time, I was like, what I want to do is be in the scuba industry, whether it be in gear or teaching or, sustainability, all these sorts of things. And so I started planting seeds. And that's when I started my See Caitlin McCall Instagram account. And I was waking up every day at 8 a.m. posting. Some of you that may have followed me from the very beginning probably know that and remember that. But it's crazy. I mean, people probably think, oh, you're a girl on Instagram. It's really easy to get that many followers. It was not. I mean, but we're talking about I've only had that account for a year, and I've built that following. But it was hard. It was hard work, and I'm really happy that I did it, because now I feel like I have this community around me of like-minded people who are also interested in sustainability. So, with that Instagram account, I already had, I was probably at like 12,000 followers then, and I moved up to St. Petersburg because I thought I'm going to continue in marine science here at the University of South Florida. And, I had just become a dive instructor as well. I did that at Rainbow Reef in Key Largo. That's a big name. You guys probably know that one. And so I was like, okay, this is the plan. And I got here, and of course, as all good plans do, it completely fell apart. I had some really bad jobs when I first got here. And I also, my first semester at University of South Florida didn't pan out the way I wanted it to. It just wasn't as passionate and as hands-on as FKCC, the college in Key West, had been. So, right at the end of last fall, when I felt like everything was sort of falling apart, I was continuing with my Instagram, and I posted a photo, and I guess the right person saw it because I was reached out to by someone named Autumn Bloom. And some of you probably know that name. She is the cosmetic chemist and founder behind the Reef Safe sunscreen called Stream to Sea. And she wanted to speak with me about doing their marketing. And it was honestly the perfect time because I've wanted a career like this. And so I met with them, and now I'm their marketing director, which was great timing. I was just so ready to get into something that I felt passionate about. And all the while, I've been working on EcoConscious Diver, which is sort of my vision. I'd really like to be, the place that people go if you're talking about eco diving and eco equipment and just resources and all of that. I want you to think EcoConscious Diver. And so I feel like, honestly, these two things are sort of moving upward synergistically for me. And it's really exciting. It's weird the way that I came to this place, because my life has never been a straight line. Even my little nephew, he always says, well, you live all over the world. You never stay in one place, Aunt Caitlin. And I don't. if something wasn't working for me, I've never felt like I needed to stay. I just have always continued to move on, and I think that's how I've gotten so much experience in my short life, is just because of that. Um, and I've definitely had some hard times and gotten through those, and I think it's made me a lot stronger. Um, I also feel like it not working out at the college here was actually a blessing in disguise, because I think that my role in this entire sustainability war, well, I hate saying war, this sustainability, we'll call it push, is actually to be the voice of scientists, because my worry now is that people just aren't listening to scientists the way that they should be. It's insane how regular people think that they know more than scientists. And if I can just give a voice to those people that are actually out here making a difference, I think that is more what I'm programmed to do. And that's my role in this whole thing. So if I can give a voice to those scientists that are making a difference, that means the world to me. And really, that's what I'm out here for. I want to interview different scientists and community leaders and people who are making a difference, and give a voice to those people in a way that never has been done before. I didn't realize this until recently, but I guess I'm the only female dive podcast host, which is really exciting, and I had no idea that was the case. So woohoo for that. And that, I think that's it. I'm really, really excited to be here, and I just want to thank you guys so much for giving me a chance to learn and grow with you, and to hopefully teach you some stuff that you don't know, not only from myself, but just from all of these other people that I'm going to be interviewing as well. So that concludes my introduction to me and who I am, why I'm passionate about the ocean, and my second podcast episode. I encourage you to head over to the social channels and come say hello. Follow on Instagram and Facebook at EcoConscious Diver, and you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. See Caitlin McCall. And finally, if you're an eco-conscious diver or know someone who would make a great guest on this show, I encourage you to shoot over a quick email to caitlin@eco-consciousdiver.com for a consideration. I want to thank you so much for tuning into my second episode. I can't wait to hang out with you guys again and see what positivity we can bring into the world and to our oceans. That's it. See ya.